Welcome to the BITOSA Global webinar. The today's webinar is about the market impact of COVID-19. My name is Chandrasekhar. I am from 2K7 batch. I live in California. I work for Yahoo right now. So before we start this, let me take you guys through some logistics. The first thing on my list is so we are recording this webinar. We'll upload this on our YouTube channel, and we'll also share it through our Facebook and Instagram feeds. If you are not following us on Facebook, please like our page. It's www.facebook.com/BITOSA. We have a YouTube channel in the name of BITOSA Global, so you can subscribe there to see our past and future webinars. The second point in my list is you can take screenshots or capture the video of this webinar, and you can share with your friends. Just don't forget to tag us while you are sharing it on social media. The third point is so many of you have already submitted all the questions. We will also take some questions live. There's a chat section on Zoom at the bottom, so you can submit your question over there. Aroop will be taking some questions. The next point is after this webinar, we'll send you a small email with the link to submit your feedbacks. So we'll appreciate if you can provide the feedbacks as soon as possible, so that we can improve if there's any thing we can. That's it on the logistics side. So I will hand over this to one of our senior from 1995 batch, Mr. Abhishek Sinha. He is the co-founder and the CEO of Eco India and Shell Services. Abhishek sir, to you.
Thank you, Chandrasekhar, and thank you, Aroop sir, for making time. We, the volunteers at BITOSA Global, are absolutely fanatical and passionate about building this alumni platform, which is for the alumni and by the alumni. For us to drive this mission, it is critical to remain relevant for the alumni. This is a tall order as we have a wide spectrum to cover, right from students, young professional entrepreneurs, and right up to the CXOs. In keeping with this, BITOSA Global brings to the alumni experts who are also from amongst us, and it is in this endeavor that we bring in today's webinar. There are a lot of questions in our minds. Some of us did not get our past year's bonuses, appraisals have been suspended, salaries have been steeply cut. There are questions like, what's the future of my job? How secure is it? Will I get back to my current levels of salaries? I work for an airline, a hotel. I've lost my job. How should I reskill myself for this new world order post COVID-19? I've just started. I was in conversation with various investors. All discussions seem to have paused. What's the outlook on valuations and funding? I have a job offer. Should I be worried about my joining? Should I be worried about my remuneration? Will the company stick to their commitment? I'm a CXO. How do I use this as an opportunity to disrupt? How should I methodically go about it? These and many more questions are crossing our minds. We are being confronted by it, by our juniors, colleagues, investors, and so on. The questions also bring out our anxieties. Apart from the fact that some of us are getting inundated with managing our kids at homes and are managing our homes. And there's practically, literally, there's no escape even for a breath of fresh air. To help us answer these questions and many more, please join me in welcoming our senior alumni, Aroop Zutshi sir. He's from amongst us. He's from the 1980 batch and is currently the global president and managing partner at Frost Sullivan. Aroop sir has seen 4 downturns in his long career. I'm not sure whether he enjoys this mention, While he confesses that this is unprecedented, during his presentation, he'll advise us on how to respond, reset ourselves, more importantly, and provide us with a template to rebound successfully. I would now like to hand over the presentation to Aroop sir.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you, Chandra. I hope everybody can hear me. Thank you. I see Neeraj saying yes, so I'm assuming it's working well. Thank you very much. So first and foremost, a very, very good morning and good afternoon, good evening to all of you for joining us today. As Chandra and Abhishek rightly said, this is being done on behalf of BITOSA Global. Very delighted to be part of that fantastic alumni association. I must acknowledge that many people have worked behind the scene to put this program together. Neha from our BITOSA Pune office, Ramesh from our office in, from our alumni group in Bangalore, and many others. I hope I haven't missed naming all the people. So thank you very much to all of you for having taken the time to do it. And as Abhishek rightly said, this is one of the most unprecedented times what we are experiencing. I have personally never experienced something like this, even though I've gone through 4 big transitions and pivots in my personal life. And I know many of you who are on the call today have probably gone through that same experience, right? So what I've tried to do in this 30, 40 minutes that we'll be together reviewing this material is try to cover the entire bandwidth and the spectrum, which obviously is quite challenging. So I'm not sure if I've done enough justice to each and every point Abhishek mentioned, but I will give you some idea of how we can manage, reset ourselves, and of course, be ready for rebound. And a lot of it is got to do with the mindset. So without further ado, let me get started and get you all a bit of information moving forward. So obviously that was briefly about myself. I am from the 1980, 1984 mechanical engineering. So fantastic 4 years at the institute. One of the very interesting concepts I wanted to share with all of you is the whole concept of growth. You know, we do a survey with CEOs all over the world each year, and what we are finding, whether it is a strong economy, whether it is a difficult economy, or whether it's a crisis like this, you will notice that every CEO, number one objective is growth. Because they recognize that if they don't grow, if the company doesn't grow, if the airline industry doesn't go, it is impossible to maintain the business, and it's impossible to survive and thrive. So this is the number one objective. And I can tell you, growing in today's day and age is a lot difficult than what it was a decade or 2 decades ago. So it is becoming very challenging. And what we have found is that these are the 8 primary reasons why companies and organizations struggle to grow. The compression of the customer value chain. You know, customers want things cheaper, better, faster. How do you make that available? There are big transformative megatrends. Things are moving so rapidly. We've just seen what's happened to us in the last 4 to 6 weeks. There are innovative new business models that are coming in. We've seen that in the mobility industry with car sharing, etc. Then there is disruptive technologies. I mean, these are coming and hitting us from every different angle. Nobody ever expected AI, which was a 2-decade-old conversation, to completely revolutionize what we are doing today. But in this particular case, I think what's really happened is what I like to call as a geopolitical chaos. So COVID-19 is what has induced this geopolitical chaos. And like I mentioned, this is by far the most unprecedented impact that we have seen in the world since the 1920s. That's the impact of this political chaos that has been created. So let's look at what has this done to our global economy. And as you can see, this has had a severe impact in every part of the world. And we ran 2 scenarios within our teams internally and thought, what would it mean if it was a severe pandemic, and what would it be if it was a global emergency? And you will notice, irrespective, there will be a significant drop in consumption. There'll be a significant drop in GDP. There'll be a significant economic impact in every part of the world. Obviously, more in some parts, less in some parts. So if you look at it from a regional perspective, US, which is a very heavily consumer-driven economy, clearly with all the lockdowns, all the shutdowns, everything has had a massive impact. As of yesterday, I checked the latest numbers. We have more than 18 to 20 million people who have applied for unemployment. That has never happened in this country in a long, long time. And I don't think we have still seen the full impact of that slowdown. So we'll see more and more impact. The only good news is we believe, especially in the US, that the number of active cases is beginning to peak, which means in the coming weeks, coming months, we should see a decline in the overall new cases and therefore fatalities and therefore hopefully a recovery phase. But irrespective, I don't see US economy to recover till about Q3, Q4 of 2021. We'll start seeing some improvement, but the real recoveries will start in the second half of next year. So there's still a bit of trouble as we look forward into the very near future. Europe is a completely different story. We know countries like Italy, Spain, the UK, all of these have been very severely impacted. So even though the governments are giving it stimulus, especially for medium and small enterprises, the reality is it's going to take time for them to recover. The tourism industry is completely decimated. These countries depend a lot on tourism. That will have a severe impact in the coming quarters and I would almost say a couple of years. I think the bright spot here is Asia Pacific. I think countries like Korea, Japan, and many of those countries will actually see some significant stability and improvement. And I think because there's a lot of easy movement of goods within the region, I think Asia Pac will come out of this much quicker, much faster, and probably by second, third quarter of this year alone, we should start seeing their economies rebound. When it comes to China, which is a very important part of this global economy, obviously we all know China is where all this started. And what will happen now is, in my opinion, China is the one that will actually get things back on track. So today, I can tell you pretty much all the cities in China, whether it's Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Hong Kong, have all restarted. Businesses are back on track. Restaurants have opened with, of course, distancing between people who go to these restaurants. But basically, the economy has started to move. We will still, of course, have some short-term challenges. And the reason we'll have short-term challenges in China is because a lot of the labor who work in factories had gone back for their holidays. And the problem is because of the lockdown, their ability to come back will be somewhat restricted. So as long as that happens, the factories will not be fully staffed. Therefore, production will still struggle in the short term. But I do believe the recovery will happen a lot quicker. Supply chains will start to stabilize. And obviously, this will have a positive impact on the global economy. Let's look at India. I know many of our attendees today are from India. So I thought, let me give you some quick perspective. India, of course, will pretty much follow what's happening in a global environment. Today, there is no one country that's independent from the other country. There's a lot of global interdependency. So depending on how the pandemic penetrates within the Indian system, these numbers can change and they can change quite dramatically. But one can safely say that we should start to see, all going well, a recovery by the end of this year, going into Q1 of 2021. So the coming 2 quarters will be quite painful, in my opinion. If you look at India from a depth of disruption, you are going to see a -4%, maybe even higher contraction as far as the economy is concerned. The length, as I said, it depends if we stay disciplined, if the lockdown continues in the short term, which has both a positive and a negative impact. I do believe that we have a good chance of getting out of this before the end of this year, but definitely quarter one, quarter two of 2021. So I think that discipline lockdown will be very, very crucial for India. All these estimates, forecasts, factors all of these in. So these can very well move in any direction, and the situation is so volatile right now. It's very difficult for anybody to give you a very solid forecast. Unless you have a crystal ball, nobody can do that. And I know nobody has it. We all take data, we put that into our models and run scenarios, and this is what these numbers indicate. So be prepared for these changes. If you look at sector-wise in a country like India, obviously 25%, a large percentage of Indian population workforce is casual labor, and that group has been very severely affected by this COVID-19. Likewise, we have the white-collar workers. Even those groups have been impacted. If you look at the urban cities, all the big cities in India, I would say there is unemployment somewhere in the 30% range today, and that number may not necessarily reflect the realities on the ground. It could be much higher. What are companies doing? Yes, of course, as Abhishek rightly mentioned, it's ranging from, unfortunately, layoffs to furloughs to delays in salary, pushback on employment offers that were given. So these are things that companies are doing to mitigate their risk and manage cash flow. Because under these circumstances, the biggest impact that most companies have is cash flow crisis and liquidity crisis. And to conserve the existence of the company, that's the first reaction most people have. So yes, the economy will have a massive impact in the short term, and we will see, unfortunately, a lot of unemployment. And of course, there are a lot of social issues that come up when you have such high levels of unemployment. Globally, we expect almost 200 million people, unfortunately, to lose their jobs, some permanently and some temporarily. But there will be a massive, massive impact. We're already seeing it. I mentioned in US alone, I think the numbers are staggering. The numbers, in my opinion, are closer to 25, 30 million people, because there are many people who don't have the ability to file for their unemployment claims. So in that instance, they are not recorded as a part of the impact. As if you, like I said again, if you look at how the industries have changed, I think many industries in India have changed for the long term, and that's why you're seeing massive and huge job cuts, especially in manufacturing. I'll share in a second how that is happening. So all in all, unfortunately, as we go through this, we will see some significant unemployment happening all across India. But this is not just unique in India. This is happening in practically every part of the world. We talk about entrepreneurship. This has been a big, big area of growth in the last 5 to 10 years. And that's something that's happened in every part of the world. One is because technology has made that happen. Becoming an entrepreneur, which used to be a massive expense, capex and opex in the past, is now relatively a lot less than it was in the past. So that as a result, we saw a huge growth in entrepreneurship in a country like India, and of course in other parts of the world. And right here in Silicon Valley, where I'm based, entrepreneurship is in our DNA. Everybody talks about starting a new company. So yes, will funding be affected? Yes, funding will be affected. Just as companies are going through liquidity crisis, the investors are also seeing a significant drop in their liquid assets as well. And as with any investor, whether it is a venture capitalist, individual investor, PE investor, depending on where you are, remember, they're all there to make great deals. And when they want to make great deals, they want to see how far this crisis can go, because what that does is allows them to pick up assets at very, very, very favorable valuations, unlike in the past. So we are going to see funding drop substantially, cash drop substantially, and that will pose a lot of risk among the entrepreneurs who are out there. Those that have committed money already with them I think they are relatively safe, but I think they will be challenged quite a bit from their investors because everybody wants to know and understand what this COVID-19 will do to their investments and the business at large. So be prepared for those kinds of questions, but the funding will shrink. And so if you're looking at an entrepreneurship startup, I will say this is not necessarily the best time to do it. You might want to delay by a few quarters so you get the right kind of funding, the right kind of partner. At the same time, you get the quality of valuation that you really deserve. So when we talked, actually, my team in India had actually done a quick survey, and we asked a lot of the investors what do they think and how will they look to invest. I will say surprisingly, about a very relatively a smaller percentage of people said, look, we will probably not fund, we'll keep it small, we will wait till this plays out. So that was about 30 or 35%, which was surprising to me. But I can tell you there's a big difference between what they say and what they do. I think there's a very large percentage of people in the investment community that will actually slow it down. I wanted to now take a little different perspective and understand the impact of these industries, impact of COVID on the industries. And as you can see, practically every industry, whether it is in the world or it's in a specific country, has been impacted by COVID-19. Some obviously more, some obviously less. So you can see industries like healthcare, chemicals, personal care, ICT are relatively having a net positive impact. But industries like travel, tourism, hospitality, mobility are having a net negative impact. But the reality is every one of them is having an impact. I mean, even if you look at healthcare, for example, which appears to have a very positive net impact, there are segments within that healthcare industry, such as medical devices, such as surgical equipment. All of those are slowing down because there are no real surgeries happening as of today. So while there's a huge demand for hospital infrastructure, for a lot of ventilators, but parts of that industry are not doing that well. Likewise, if you look at the mobility industry, you'll see the same issue. Many parts of mobility are completely being affected, especially in the area of shared mobility. So, companies like Uber and Ola's of the world are seeing significant impact. At the same time, there's a lot of growth happening in the bike rentals. And so if you go to countries like China and many other countries in the world, there is a huge demand for bikes because that obviously keeps you safer compared to the rest of the people. So there's no contact and you maintain the social distancing. So this is a trend that you're going to see across the board in every industry. And so keep that in mind. If you look at from an Indian context, you can see pretty much every industry has been affected. Some moderate, some significant, and some very, very severe. So the manufacturing sector across the board in India and worldwide is seeing tremendous impact. Likewise, retail, the people who are on the front end will find it significantly impacted because these jobs don't exist as of now. But on the other hand, media, entertainment, all these areas, and I'll talk about some opportunities momentarily, these are all going to go up. The PV solar industry for the short term will be affected. You won't see those rooftop installations happening in the short term. Likewise, the banking financial sectors will see massive impact because valuations are dropping, companies are struggling. So you've all seen a significant drop in the stock markets, in the liquidity in the stock markets globally. Though now I think the emotional impact has been recognized by all the markets, so you can begin to see a slight stabilization, but still at much lower levels than before. So all in all, this will happen. But what you also have to remember is we will come out of it, and we will come out of it strong, and we will rebound every time we have done that. In fact, here's the important point to all of you. Every time we have recovered from a crisis, this one is unprecedented, but every time we have come out of a crisis, and as Abhishek and Chandra rightly mentioned, I've gone through 4 of these crises in my career. I'm sure many on the call have gone through it as well. And every time that's happened, the industries have actually rebounded very well. So one thing I'll encourage everybody, irrespective of where you are in your career and what roles you play and what companies you run, this is not the time to be gloom and doom, but this is the time to reset and be ready for that rebound. Because yes, you will be hit now, but you need to be ready, because when the rebound happens, if you're not prepared, that's when you lose the greatest. Okay, so this is an important message. And every company in the previous these crises that have prepared on driving their growth agenda, building what the new world will look like, and preparing for that new world are the ones that have been successful. So to all of you, I say, don't be gloom and doom, be ready for that future. And so therefore, this is my message to many, many people on the call who have leadership positions at the corporate level, down to business unit levels, divisional levels. Invest in your future. This is the absolute right time to do so. Okay, bring your teams together. There are digital platforms like this that will allow you to spend the time, which oftentimes is not possible given the travel schedules all of us have. Build a strong growth pipeline. And I'm going to share with you a process that you can use. This is proprietary, but I'm happy to share it with all of you. See if you can use it within your organization. Now is the time to look at, well, how you can have a competitive edge. Connect with your customers, current and potential customers of the future. So stay engaged with customers. This is not the time to disengage. Be engaged. Put in policies of not losing any customer. Even if the customer says, I can't pay, stay engaged with the customer, because these are the same customers that will come back to you. Integrate new business models. Think about the world in the future and think about ways in how people will work and operate. We've seen such a big movement from offline to online. This is going to stay for the long term. So understand that very well. Those that are in the investment community, I've seen questions coming from people about, where should I invest my money? I think I will to that answer later, but for people who are in the investment business, who are people who invest in companies, there are some incredible assets available that are unfortunately distressed, but available for either potential partnership, potential acquisitions to all the business unit leaders. Also, I say you should be working on. And the one that I will absolutely insist that everybody does is the acceleration in the digitization of your company, both for internal purposes and external purposes. So digitize, because one way to get out of this and get ready for that rebound is digitization. And I'll again share a model for all of you to take advantage of it. So this is the proprietary model I was referring to. It's called the growth pipeline engine. It has basically 5-step process. And one thing I can tell you is if you follow this process and you're rigorously disciplined, you will see success at the end of the day. It's happened to many, many companies. I've worked with many companies worldwide, and I can say more than 98% of Fortune 1000 companies use either this or a version of this internally, and they have seen success. And again, I'll show you some examples of unicorns. So it starts by building an opportunity universe. So look at all opportunities, evaluate that in a systematic way, look at its impact on cash flow, revenue impact, margin impact, customer impact, understand whether these new opportunities have that impact, what customer needs are you serving and addressing, then build a go-to-market strategy of how you're going to get into that market. Is it through partnership? Is it through licensing? Is it through acquisitions? Of course, rubber meets the road when you have very rigorous planning and implementation part in place. So make sure you do that. And because of such heavy changes, COVID-19 or digital technologies, I think it's important that you put a program of monitoring and optimization and make sure you're getting constant feed of intelligence through proper dashboards. So you make sure your plans and your strategy is working for you. So follow this process. It's not very complicated. It is pretty straight. And to get this process going, here's what I would encourage all of you to do is get your teams together and start working and look at the 6 different things that you need to understand to build a growth pipeline and work through this framework. One is megatrend. So visualize what the future will look like in Q2, Q4, and 2021 onwards. Look at new ways of doing business. Look at new business models. Look at what new technologies will be in the forefront. And again, look at areas of industry convergence. The biggest growth today is happening not necessarily in the verticals, but it's happening when two industries collide. Look at evolving customer needs. Customers are going to be very different. Understand their needs, and of course, geographies. There will be many geographies, new emerging geographies that will come up during and after this crisis. So look at all these perspectives, put them on a sheet of paper, put them in a spreadsheet, and then follow this 5-step rigorous process. And I guarantee you, you will see success. These are some very quick questions. Normally I do these as polling questions. We don't have much time today, but these are areas. Make sure your teams look at new business model, disruptive technologies, industry convergence. So these are the streams you need to look at, bring it all together, and then work through that workshop. So to all the business leaders, if you're not meeting your teams for about 3 hours once a week, then you are not serious about this, guys. So make sure you do that, because that is the way you can get out of this chaos that we are all currently experiencing. This is another framework I would like to share with you. Again, this is my own company's private proprietary, but I'm sharing it for all of you to look at it, use it. And basically it's what I like to call as building the future growth potential for companies as well as technologies and markets in which you participate. So these are some very easy growth indexes and innovation index. So on these two index, mark all your ideas. And it's so interesting when you do that exercise, you realize where should you spend your time and where is the future growth potential. And that's how you can make some good strategic decisions. So use these frameworks. These are not complicated. They're easy to use, easy to leverage, but these are tools that will help you to reset your business now and be ready for the rebound. Okay. Now, what I'm going to share with you is in many industries, where are the new growth opportunities? People always ask me saying, is this gloom and doom? Is this the end of the world? And my answer is absolutely no. You can see as you look into the very near future and extended future, just in the ICT industry, there are so many new opportunities that are going to come up in the coming quarters in the different areas. Obviously, big data will be big and a very important component. That market is going to see explosive growth. Somebody asked me, where will my career, what are the career opportunities? Guys, this is in front of you. This is where the career opportunities will happen. When as 5G gets rolled, you will see applications in the healthcare industry. So if anybody is in the healthcare industry, remote patient monitoring, all of these areas will become very, very important. Elderly care will become very important, leveraging these technologies. So these technologies are not just going to stay within the industry that they serve, but these technologies will enable other industries as well. So the message to all the people on the call is, don't just look at this as a industry opportunity, but look at this as how you can take this and apply it in the industry that you're currently involved with. So again, obviously I don't have time to go through all of these, but you can see the incredible opportunity that is available. So these are places for every graduating student. Look at these areas of opportunity. These are the kinds of segments of markets you want to focus on. These are the companies that you want to go to. This is where you want to apply. So if you are in the school today and you are making those decisions, or you have applied somewhere and a company has said, I'm not going to accept you, retool yourself. This is the best time to retool yourself and be prepared for this upcoming future. If you're in the chemicals, materials, and nutrition, I'll just take one example, and that's the personal protection equipment. You've seen the incredible demand for masks and gloves and all kinds of protective equipment. That is going to see massive increases, and a lot of technology development will happen in that space as well. For care chemicals, sanitizing will be very important. So you'll see all these areas are going to be big part of our future because many things are going to change permanently. These are not temporary changes. These are changes for the permanency. And you've seen that happen even when we had 9/11, for example. When 9/11 happened, travel industry changed forever. That's what's going to happen for us as we get out of this crisis. If you look at the automation industry, I know many of you are from the manufacturing industry. Clearly, this industry unfortunately has been affected the most because of double whammy. Not only COVID-19, but oil prices were already creating a havoc in this industry on a worldwide basis. So, but on the other hand, again, when you look at remote monitoring, automation, IoT, AI, ML, I think all those things will become big areas of investment for every company in this industry. So I see tremendous opportunity. Robotics will be big, sensors, remote inspection, all of these will be big areas of growth and therefore job opportunities for all the graduating people as well as people in the industry as well. When you look at energy environment, I've seen multiple questions on this from our audience today. And I can tell you one benefit here is many of the projects in the energy environment take time to implement. So I don't expect some of the big installations to be massively affected, but smaller installations like the PV installations within the companies will be affected. But you will see a lot of opportunity in home automation, for example, indoor air quality. Those are areas where we'll see some significant growth. And I think that's where the future will be. So our homes will be connected. We will see governments putting a lot of emphasis in this space. One thing, remember, the government will have to play a very important role in this rebound. So they will invest in a lot of physical infrastructure, a lot of digital infrastructure to create and spur that economy. And so this is where you will see a lot happening as well. The automotive industry, which I like to call as mobility industry, obviously has been affected quite substantially in the last couple of quarters. Obviously in India, this was already happening, but the impact was already felt across many sectors within this industry. As I mentioned earlier, shared mobility has been impacted. Bike sharing will be a lot more used in the future rather than car sharing. So these different models will happen. Likewise, I think we will see that many new type of health, wellness, and hygiene elements will be brought into vehicles. Many companies in the US, OEMs in Europe, as well as in China, are building the next generation of cars with those hygiene factors, health, wellness, and well-being embedded in the mobility, in the mobility solution, whether it's a two-wheeler, four-wheeler, or many other solutions that we have, connected trucks, etc. So again, lots of demands. Electric vehicle will also see an impact now, but eventually it is clearly a direction in which the world is going to move more in the future. If you look at the healthcare space, I think I will make a very bold statement with all of you today. It is by far the most defining industry. It will see a change like we have never seen before. Healthcare will be a completely different industry when we come out of it. Okay. Now, what that does is it disrupts everything we are doing today, but it opens up tremendously new opportunities in the future. Digital health will become a huge part. Medical devices, medical imaging, all these will change in historic proportions in the future. Now, what that does is allows companies from all industries to participate, especially if you're in the technology space, if you're in ICT industry. This is a huge industry to participate in. So understand the healthcare industry, understand how this will evolve, but this is where you will see a lot of disruption, but a lot more opportunity coming down the pike as well. A lot in the area of remote monitoring, remote patient monitoring as well. So just very quickly, these are some of the unicorns, and I've seen companies who have used the process I mentioned earlier. It was easy to identify some of the technologies, some of the companies at the very early stages. And as you can see now, many of these have really, really become multi-billion-dollar organizations. So for example, I know we had identified grocery delivery as a big area of future potential, online delivery, uh, in-home delivery, and we'd identified companies like Instacart that probably would be the companies of the future. And as you can see, because of COVID-19, these companies have seen some tremendous growth. Likewise, electric vehicles, we had said, would be a large industry that came out of this process and methodology. And today we know it's one of the largest with companies like Tesla. We talked about desktop manufacturing. My own background being mechanical, I had mentioned this myself when I was an analyst in the company, that desktop manufacturing, rapid prototyping, those days we didn't use the word 3D printing or 3D manufacturing, will be the future. And today, as you can see, it's a fantastic large industry. Same is true with smart card, facial recognition for personal identity are all important elements. Car sharing, smart cities, areas of convergence themes. So I think this is a regular exercise I encourage all of you to follow, including for students. This is very important, guys, for you to look at these, because this is where the future is, and you have to align yourself to this future, not what is oftentimes taught in universities. So a bit more in the area of where are the future, where can I get my jobs. So AI, big data, these are huge areas of opportunity. Advanced analytics, LiDAR, all these areas will see some tremendous growth in the future. I mentioned briefly robotics, whether it is robotics in the healthcare field, whether it's robotics in the industrial field, all of these areas will see some significant growth. Drones, whether it is for in-home delivery, drones to move products, drones to get into areas that are difficult for human beings to go, you will see tremendous growth opportunities in that space. I think one thing we will all now experience is remote working. I remember when I started our company in India, people asked, "Hey, is remote working possible?" And I said, "No, we don't allow people to work from home. Everybody's got to be in the office." And we invested a lot of money in real estate, putting offices all across India, put 7 offices, spent a lot of money building those offices. But what this COVID-19 has done is shown us that, look, work can still get done. You don't have to be in a physical office anymore. And so I think there's a lot of evolution and change that will happen. And so with that will come, networks, cloud, it'll be security, cyber security, business for business continuity reasons. So these are the areas where I see tremendous opportunity for growth for all of us, right? So let me now move from, how do you get ready and how do you implement this? So the message I want to give everybody is think about yourself as a connected enterprise, okay? And one thing I will recommend to all the people on the call, especially the leaders on the call, is please be very transparent, be honest, have tremendous integrity. Tell people on your team where you are, where is the business, what's the level of crisis. I can tell you, most people understand. So you don't have to keep it in the boardrooms. Share it with the people. Tell them the impact of the crisis and give them hope. Hope is very important today for everybody, because without hope, things will not happen. And we've seen it. We've come out, guys. As a human race, we can do it. We can fight it. And I think about and put a growth mindset for everybody. All right. So when you're responding, look at technology, data, reorganize your people, and I'll share with you in a second how you should do that, and make sure you are fine-tuning your processes so that you're easy decision making and you're getting ready through a digital framework for the rebound. So, when we asked CEOs what were some of their top of mind issues, they talked about, of course, cash and liquidity. They talked about diminished sales pipeline. They also mentioned employee morale and productivity is very down. They said cost of operation, changing customers. So basically, these are the top of the line issues for all the CEOs and top level business leaders. And what I would say to them and to anybody on the call, put your teams into 3 primary groups. One is a crisis management team that can help you respond to the current team. Put a growth team that's getting you ready for the rebound, and the digital team that will completely ensure that you are maximizing your future growth potential. So you need all these 3 teams to be in place, and that will get you out of this chaos in a very short order. Make sure your teams are self-organized, they're agile, they're empowered, they have the ability to make decisions, and you are bringing people from different groups to work to make those decisions happen. So give them the freedom, give them the flexibility, because now is not the time to hold on to all the power. It must be decentralized moving forward. As far as the model that will work to respond, I call it the connected business model, and that means if you have done it already, fantastic. If you haven't done it, bring in technologies inside your organization to create that connectivity in the business, because that will allow you to respond and scale up your business, including change it to new business models as well. So this is the framework I was referring to earlier. This is a fantastic framework. I say to all companies, irrespective of your size, irrespective of your geography, irrespective of uh, the the uh, the industry that you serve. This is a fantastic framework that you can use to make your business very connected. Okay, so please leverage this kind of a framework. It will help you be prepared for the rebound. And we have leveraged this framework, and again I'm sharing some very proprietary stuff that we use with our clients, and you can see we have helped clients through this journey. You can all take advantage of the information I'm providing to get your organizations ready for this future. But as you can see on the future side, it's all digital delivery, outcome based delivery, new ways, platforms. This is how the future will look like for us, right? So I'm coming to pretty much the very end of my presentation. And so new business models, new delivery models, and new products will be the way for the future, because the demands will be very different from what they are today. Yeah. So that's in short. This is what the structure that I mentioned. Please leverage it. Anybody interested, and by the way, you don't have to. This is only for anyone who's interested. I put a diagnostic. So if some company wants any help, let me know. I'm happy to get my team to work on it, and we'll also send you for only BITOSA people a special output that will benchmark your company with the best in class, and will also give you a score to see if you're ready for this future. So if you're interested, let me know, and I'll make sure my team is able to give this to you. With that, I'll stop, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I certainly did, and I'm happy to take any questions. With that, I'm going to hand it back to both Abhishek and to Chandra. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Aroop sir, for this nice presentation. So we'll go through some of the questions we have seen on our portal as well as on Zoom. I will start with the first question from Mr. Raghu from 1984 batch. The question is, will not the world have a trust deficit with China in doing businesses? There is some news that Japan wants to move its business out of China already. So your comments.
Yes. Yes, I think great question. The reality is when anybody does a simulation, it is very clear, very obvious for companies to not put all their eggs in one basket. Having a plan B, plan C, plan D, redundancy plans are very, very important. But as always, uh, there are tremendous pressure on bottom line performances for most companies. As I mentioned earlier, growth is not that easy. So despite plan B, plan C, many organizations don't end up executing to those plans. Many companies have done it. They have used other countries in the world, including India, as plan B and plan C, with the main plan being in China. But unfortunately, in many instances, what's happened is the same companies who were given the work in India have actually subcontracted it to China because it was still cheaper for them to get things done out of China. So is there a trust deficit in China? I think I wouldn't go to that extent. What I would say is that it is a rude awakening to every company in the world that you simply cannot put your eggs in one basket. You need redundancy plans, you need plan B, you need plan C. So what this will do now will accelerate that plan B, plan C, right? Because one thing is very clear. It's happened this time. That does not mean a pandemic of this magnitude may not happen in the future. As mankind, as human beings, we get involved in areas which we were not involved in the past. These pandemics can happen. What we will learn now is the ability to have a global unified response, unlike the chaotic response we've had so far. So I don't think there's a trust deficit. There are clear economics. So once things calm down, things will begin to happen. But yes, have countries like Japan made a decision? I think they put about $2 billion they're giving to Japanese companies to relocate facilities out of China. The answer is yes. I think more will do it, and we will see many manufacturing jobs shift out of China to other parts of the world. As I said, it should have been done before. Finally, this will make them do it. And many countries, including India, has the potential of benefiting from this shift in global manufacturing. Thank you, Chandra.
So we have a next question from Mr. Arun Nathan from the 1964 batch. Could this crisis present a big opportunity for the Indian economy to bounce back after pandemic subdues and manufacturing activity resumes? Indian pharma companies have, if reported, are believed to have already received US FDA approvals for exporting their products to USA, something which they were waiting for very long. This besides the export clearance for HCQ tablets. What are your views?
So I do believe when we get off this pandemic, the Indian economy will actually have positive impact. We'll see benefits, and there are so many global shifts that we are going to see. We will see that to have a net positive impact on the Indian economy. The biggest question, I call it the $1 billion and maybe now the $1 trillion question for all of us is when. And this when is a matter of how we all handle these crises in our individual countries. So if India can manage this process very well through this lockdown, which now I understand has been extended till the end of this month, which I think is important, while it remains very painful for many people, but it's critical that we get rid of this crisis through social distancing. I do believe that we can get off this, and Indian economy will see a rebound. We will see manufacturing having a positive impact. We will see healthcare. We'll see ICT industry. All the industries that I mentioned earlier on the left side of that slide will see some significant movement in the right direction. Now, when it comes to pharma in particular, I know there's been a massive movement in the US. I'm not necessarily convinced that this is a movement for the long term. This is a very short-term reaction that the president of US, Donald Trump, has done. I don't think it's a long-term solution. So yes, does it feel good? Is it exciting? The answer is yes. But I do not believe that there is a long-term sustainable model for something like this. This country is very tough, very strict with FDA rules. So even though they are making these statements, a lot of it belongs to the hope category. There is no clinical evidence that this will help the COVID crisis. So I don't believe that this will personally have a major impact on the Indian pharma sector. So the rigidity will continue as soon as things come out of it, and that, like I said, can happen before the end of this year. So I would keep my hopes high, but I think a bit of wait and watch will do. But my personal belief is I don't expect any lowering down of any of the standards in the US when it comes to FDA approvals. Thank you, Abhishek. Over to you.
Okay, so the next question is from Mr. Vijay Varman from 1964 batch. The question is, in your opinion, how long one has to be prepared for this economic crisis, especially for the small businesses?
Thank you. Hello, Barmanji. I, of course, know Barmanji personally very well. So thank you for your question and thank you for being on the call with us. So like I mentioned earlier, I think there is a bit of a crystal ball thinking. a lot is dependent on how we curtail the spread of this virus. The more this virus spreads, the more it creates the need for governments to get tighter with social distancing. Now, what I also believe is that this year will be a challenging year, especially the next two quarters. Quarter 2 and quarter 3 will be very challenging. I do personally expect, and all the models indicate, that we will start to see some stability in quarter 4 of this year, but the real recovery starting in quarter 1 of next year. Now, what can also happen while all this is going on is, as we know, all biotech companies, all pharma companies are ferociously, feverishly working to get a vaccine out as quickly as possible. In fact, yesterday I read a note from a agency in Israel. They have started to prepare for clinical trials in the coming weeks, and they are confident, based on lab results, that they might have a vaccine for coronavirus by June of this year. And that means it can go, if that ends up happening, then it can go into production by quarter 3, which means we can have this available for our use by quarter 4 of this year. So if that were to happen, and just not from Israel, but from all other major pharma companies, that can certainly accelerate and reduce the time frame. But to Brahmanji, yourself, and to all the business leaders who are on the call, I would say prepare for the worst, hope for the best, and I would say plan for a slowdown at least till the end of this year before you're ready for a takeoff. So that would be my time frame for all of you. That's exactly what we are doing in our own business to make sure that we are ready for a slowdown and we manage your business till at least the end of this year. Thank you for your question. Back to you, Chandra.
So I think we have time for just one more question. This question is from Ranjay sir from Jaipur, 1981 batch. Suppose we lose 2 months of our work due to this virus, will the economy go into a tailspin and never be able to recover? Or could it be a blessing in disguise for India? I have a feeling that India will recover fast and do well in 2021 on the economic front.
Great question. By the way, I know Ranjay very well. He was one batch junior to me, and now he's based in Jaipur. So thank you for your question, Ranjay. I do believe that we will have a short-term decline. There's no doubt. Next 2 months, next 2 quarters will be significantly difficult quarters for the country. And if this pandemic continues to grow, it'll become even more difficult. I don't believe that the downward spiral will benefit India because what that will create is massive unemployment, massive loss of wages, massive social unrest, because when people get desperate, they do desperate things. So I wish and pray that that doesn't happen. That's why I think this lockdown has to be managed very seriously, and hopefully the Indian masses adhere to this strict government policy, because India simply doesn't have the infrastructure to manage a crisis of that proportion. It simply doesn't have it, and it will just be massive fatalities if this spins out of control. So same is with the economic perspective as well. If it goes out of control, recovery is not going to be that easy. It will create too much disruption, too much pain before you can get it back. So our hope is that this stays contained. We will get out of it, in my opinion, by the end of this year, early next year. The worst case scenario, if I was to wear a pessimistic eyeglasses, I will say quarter 4 of 2021. That would be my most pessimistic issue. Otherwise, I do believe that this will rebound. But either way, I think the Indian economy has a lot to gain from this crisis, and that is, as I said, it can have a positive impact on the manufacturing side. It can have positive impact on the pharma side. It can have a positive impact on the ICT side. In the short term, many things will change, but Can we have that big support? The answer is absolutely yes. And Indians are absolutely ready for that change. So yes, India can and has the ability to recover faster than many other economies because we also have a massive domestic demand that many other countries don't enjoy. Same is true with China. Why will China come out faster? Because of domestic demand. So when countries like India and China have domestic demand, their recovery is going to be much better, much more sustainable. And that's why I think all in all, these two countries will see recovery better than the others, but time frames are what I just mentioned before. So I hope I've answered your question, but it's a great question, needs a lot of discussion because there's so many components to that. So with that, thank you very much, and back to you, Chandra and Abhishek.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the presentation today. With this, we come to the end of our session. I must thank all the participants. At the peak, we had, I think, close to 170 participants today. We hope to bring you more such relevant events and programs in the future. I would like to thank Aroop sir for making time for this event, and more importantly, our BITOSA Global's backend team, led by Ramesh sir, Neha, Chandrasekhar himself, Nitin, Varun. They contribute a lot for the promotion of all of these events and the organization of it. So thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot for the participation.
Thank you, and be safe. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.